Okay, and here it is asking us to say, yeah, got it, or leave the meeting. So I'd like to acknowledge all of the Indigenous peoples, including the Interior Salish and the Sinixt people, who historically have hunted and lived on this land. I would also like to acknowledge the two organizations that represent Indigenous peoples who share this land today, the Boundary Métis Community Association and the Boundary All Nation Aboriginal Council, also known as BANAC. Welcome everyone to our Peace Cafe that is honoring World Children's Day that was established in 1954 as the International Children's Day by the United Nations. Though Children's Day is celebrated on different dates and in different countries, international global observance to commemorate the day of the Declaration of Rights of the Child by the UN Assembly in 1959. It is celebrated globally to further the rights of children and to improve their standard of living. It also promotes international togetherness and raises awareness among children to improve their welfare. So we'll get into our program. It is a pleasure for me to introduce our first speaker, Lorana Androsov-Scott. Formerly with the Talking Little Feet Aboriginal Head Start Child Care Center, Lorana, for the past few weeks, has been transitioning to her new role with the Métis Nation BC Provincial Early Years Team. Congratulations on your new position, Lorana. I know that you possess the skills and wisdom that will positively impact children throughout all of British Columbia. My pleasure for you to begin. Lorana, thank you.
Well, thank you, Maxine. That was very warm welcome. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Children's Day. It's an honor to be here today. Children are a gift from Creator, and I personally believe they're born to be nurtured, loved, and cared for. And that has been the career, is really children development. I'm a strong believer in children are amazing. They are talk and they develop into beings of uniqueness, and the child's brain develops the most in the first 6 years of their life. So getting them the supports and that they need and that their family need are so critical. And in my own personal life, I have used the Convention on the Rights of the Child to advocate for children's well-being. And there are, let me just get the article. So my favorite article is Article 23 on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is the one that I used in my advocacy. It's Article 23 states, you have the right to special education and care if you have a disability, as well as the rights, all the rights in this convention so you can live a full life. Article number 6 is one that's very important to highlight as well. You have the right to be alive. All children have rights, and that's why this day is so important. Traditionally in the Boundary, pre-COVID days, when I was working for Boundary Family Services, we partnered with many community partners and we did free skating or free swimming to bring community together. And so it's wonderful that we have an online platform to bring community together and really to hold our children up and to acknowledge this day and the importance that this day brings. As Maxine said, I had the honor of bringing a brand new Indigenous childcare center to our area. Over 26% of students in School District 51 self-identify as Indigenous, whether that's First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, and a majority of our children identify as Métis. Being Métis myself, it's quite an honor to make this transition to Métis Nation BC as part of their provincial early years team. It's like my grandfather tapped me on the shoulder That's how I felt. Because he helped to start the Boundary Métis Community Association many years ago. And now I'm coming full circle to embrace something that I can't really explain to you right now what my role is. They're still defining my portfolio. But I really am grateful to be able to live, work, and play here in the Boundary region and representing our Métis people as well. So yeah, I look forward to hearing what the other speakers have to say. Yeah, and I'm really grateful that all of you signed on today to share this moment together and acknowledge and honor all the children. So thank you, all my relations.
Thank you so much, Lorana. I knew one of your grandfathers, and I'll tell you a story about him at some time. So thank you for joining us and for sharing with us. And thank you for your past work and your future work on behalf of children. I'm going to introduce Natasha Popov-Knox. And she has a background as a social worker, but spent most of her career as a counselor for the nonprofit Boundary Family and Individual Services. So that was an important part of what she brought as what she brought to the community, but also a very important part to her has been the work she has done with her own children, with teaching them about their heritage and their culture, working with the USCC, with the play school, as a Sunday school teacher, as a choir director. And we're very happy to have you here. And Marie is definitely looking forward to this.
Okay, am I on? Guess so. Well, thank you, Linda, for that introduction. And thanks to the organizers for providing this opportunity for us to have these chats monthly. And at the beginning stages of planning for this month, Linda and I had a casual exchange about what the Doukhobor perspective might be on raising children. And something my dad shared years ago just popped into my mind. And look where it got me, is here I am going to share that with all of you. But before I do, I'm going to, the words that I'm going to share from my dad were ones that he spoke at the opening of a child care conference in our community. And before I share his words, I would like to share a bit about the conference because it is very appropriate for today's day, a Universal Children's Day. And it kind of all flows from what Lorana spoke about and what the theme of the day is. So interestingly enough, Lorana has worked for the same agency as I did, which is now called Boundary Family Services. And that agency, along with many other agencies in our community, were pioneers, from my perspective, in developing strategies in providing services for families in a much more integrated and cohesive way. And, you know, I haven't been working for some years in that agency, and I have to admit I've kind of lost the jargon. So I'm going to use an example from some of the work that I did and what I mean by integrated services. I don't mean, there are some communities, probably still, that when they provide services, it is within their agency, their policy, their structure, their approach, and they provide programs for a child or for their family. And if a child needs a slightly different service, then they go to another agency, and that agency provides it in their form. In our community, there was a lot of visionary leaders who saw that service that could be integrated and worked together to see the child more holistically would serve the child better. So, for example, I worked with children as a counselor for children who had witnessed abuse. However, that child belonged to a family, and that child went to school, and that child occasionally needed special supports. That child perhaps needed to get shots. So every one of those needs of the child required that child to go to different agencies. An approach was developed called integrated case management, where in our area, the boundary area, I'm talking about from Christina Lake to Carmi, that was our boundary area. That is our boundary area that we served. We had the workers come together from each agency with the permission and knowledge of the child's family, of course, to put our heads together and see how we could serve that child best, so that our goals were known to each other, so that we weren't providing service in a siloed fashion, if that makes sense. So a lot of groundwork was done in that regard. A lot of relationships needed to be built at the management level, as well as the grassroots level of, like where I worked, the frontline workers. A lot of relationships had to be built with the families, with the other agency workers. But because we did put in that work, we were able to provide amazing service, because we would partner up, and Lorana referred to that already. When we could partner with other community agencies, we could provide more service, in fact. This is all just a preamble. This all evolved to the point where our community actually became well known for the way that we worked collaboratively. And it got known well enough all the way to Victoria. And Victoria actually granted funds for several pilot projects to try them in our community, because if any communities could make it work, it would be us. And you know, I already apologized to Maxine, but I don't feel like I can present the whole picture of the work that happened in our community. However, I just feel like I need to present a little bit to say what the conference was. So as services in our community evolved, there was a Make Children First, an initiative, a government initiative, and this area was granted funds for a pilot project to take our work even further, and actually have service agencies on one property, so that again, it would be more supportive to families, so they weren't going from downtown for one service and back up to the school for the other meeting and over to somewhere else for a third meeting, but to have services on one property where they could actually attend what they needed to in one place, and not have to be driving and doing childcare and all of that. And so there was a conference organized to enhance and support those efforts in our community. And it was held in the spring of 2003. And it is at this, and the conference was actually on ethics, because obviously to proceed with this vision, everyone had to buy into maintaining the integrity of and respect for all the people that we were serving. And hold ourselves accountable to maintain their dignity, their confidentiality, all of that. So this conference was organized and to enhance that, and was the keynote speaker was a psychologist, a PhD psychologist, Patricia Walensky. And the conference was held in the USCC Community Center, which is supported by the Doukhobor community. And it is at that conference that my father, Eli Popoff, was invited to do a welcoming or a blessing and little welcoming to the conference. So Linda, since you introduced me, you're going to have to be the timekeeper too, because my presentation kept evolving and I have no idea how many minutes it's going to take. I'm about halfway, if that's okay, time-wise. So for those of you who are not familiar with my dad, he passed away some 7 years ago, but he was a Doukhobor historian, an author, a lecturer, a Sunday school teacher, a translator of Doukhobor hymns and psalms, and organic vegetable gardener extraordinaire as well, who lived his life as a Doukhobor, dedicating his life to the Doukhobor movement. When he was asked, so on a little personal note, I'm an attendee at this conference back in the spring of 2003, and I had no idea that my father had been asked to say a few words at the beginning of the conference. And so I was surprised on that count. And I was also surprised that he was invited to do a blessing. And the reason I was surprised at that is because in our understanding and in our cultural understanding of and values, in our traditions, there is no one person that is elevated to bless others any more than anybody else. And so that kind of stood out a little bit for me. But I also understood that the organizers of the conference were doing their best to respect that they were in a facility supported by the Doukhobor community. So when my dad began, and I did the math, and he was about 81, about to turn 82 when he did the blessing. And how he started out was he said a Doukhobor psalm, a short prayer. And I'm going to say that today, and I will do a translation after each line. Господи, благослови. Lord, give us thy blessing. Мать моя Данения дала мне путь спасения. My mother, my real birth giver, is the giver of all things, giving me likewise the true path to salvation. Vera меня родила. Faith gave me my real awakening. Надежда воспитала. Hope nurtured me. Любовь Богу привела. Love brought me to the realization of God. Где любовь, там и Бог. Where there is love, there likewise is God. Где совет, там и свет. Where there is agreement, there likewise is enlightenment. Богу нашему слава. Our God be praised. And I'm using a translation that is his translation that was published some years ago. So after Dad read that prayer and did his translation, he explained the psalm further. although it's a simple sounding psalm and is often one that is taught early in children's development, when they're young, is what I'm trying to say. It is not a simple song. The mother referred to in it has a much broader meaning than just the physical birth mother that gives us life. He explained that mother refers to the broader, deeper, collective, all-encompassing mother, because a child learns not just from their one mother, but from all mothers around them, and from fathers too, and from the extended family, and from the people of their community, and not just from people, but from their experiences in their family and outside of it, and in the community, and in society at large. And it is that collective experience that forms and informs and teaches a child about hope and faith and love and God. And Dad explained that that's what brings a child up. That's what is the upbringing, the milieu they are immersed in, all that's around him or her. And so the upbringing of children and their learning is a collective responsibility we all carry. We all contribute to raising children and all that they learn, including faith and hope and love. Dad brought his short talk to a close by commending the conference attendees and organizers for aspiring to work together collectively to care for and bring up the children of our community. And he wished them the best in their endeavor. And I have to say, as I sat there, I was in awe of my father, because despite his age of 80 plus, and despite the age-old psalm that he shared, because in Doukhobor culture, we have an oral tradition, so we have no idea how old that psalm is, only that it's passed down from decade to decade, and likely from century to the next century. So despite the age of that, how very relevant his choice was to the spirit of the conference, and how appropriate and fitting it was that he had been invited to say a few words before the conference began. And as I thought about all of this in preparation for today, I thought about how this perspective is not unique to the Doukhobor culture, that it exists in many cultures. We have heard of it takes a village to raise a child. And because this value or belief exists in so many cultures, it feels to me today like it's kind of a universal truth. And it's an honor to be able to share my thoughts and my recollections of my dad's short presentation on the Universal Day of Children. So thank you for your time and your ears. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. That was wonderful. Our next presenter is that I'm going to introduce is, I'm going to see if I can see his face here. There he is, Simon Grandy. and my grandson, Asa, sitting over there in the corner. So Simon holds a master's degree in community development, and he's the director of the Colibri Learning Foundation, which is a not-for-profit development organization promoting educational programs that release the potential of youth and immigrant newcomers to contribute to Canadian society. He also holds a degree in education, teaches, and for the past 14 years has volunteered his time working with junior youth, so ages 11 to 14, as well as with older youth groups. So he's going to be speaking about his experiences with the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program, which worldwide strives to give this age group a voice in today's society. And as I said, he brings with him his son, Ohiesa Grandi Bighorn, now 13, and who most know as Asa. He has been in the junior youth program since the age of 11, and he'll talk a little bit about his experiences, and hopefully you'll have some questions for him. So there you go, Simon.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are just going to share in the spirit of a conversation on this special day, kind of our experience in this neighborhood. So we live in Vancouver, and we live on the east side of Vancouver. And for over a decade now, myself and a few friends, and then more and more friends, sort of outside of my professional experience, but just in the volunteer work that we wanted to do, we started to try to promote the spiritual empowerment of junior youth in this neighborhood. So I live, like, if any of you have been to Commercial Drive, this neighborhood that we work in is kind of roughly from East Hastings down Commercial to Broadway, and then stretches a little bit west up through Strathcona, like not quite into Chinatown, but maybe a bit of Chinatown. So there's about 4 elementary schools and a high school, Britannia Secondary, and a lot of the youth and kids we work with live very close and are related and really see themselves as belonging to a neighborhood. And it's been slow progress, but right now we have in the neighborhood about 10 what we call junior youth groups with about 85 youngsters in the program. And maybe before talking about the specifics of what a junior youth group is, I can just share some of the kind of ideas or principles that are behind this community initiative. It's really just a community initiative that we have in our neighborhood. It happens in many neighborhoods, but I can just speak to the one here where we live. And one of the main principles or ideas behind the junior youth program is that the age period in the life of somebody, the ages of 12 to 14, 11 to 14 are really critical. They're a time you're leaving childhood, you're approaching maturity, when a lot of ideas and notions of the world and yourself have crystallized. But you have about a 3-year window when things really start forming, your worldview starts forming. Not to say you can't stop changing, but we've really seen it strongly here in the neighborhood where, inner city, urban environment, the forces of society, how much change can happen from an 11-year-old to a 13-year-old. For the good and then for the tragic sometimes. And so there's this brief window, 11 to 14, we can say, right, that we really try to create a safe space for the young friends of that age group. And maybe before I talk about that space, some other ideas that animate the program or our approach to the program is, okay, 1, it's a real critical age period. 2 is that there's really a lot of erroneous ideas that are propagated about that age group, which we encounter a lot when we tell people, when we're trying to collaborate with other organizations in the community about how we're working with 11 to 14-year-olds. And there's a lot of encouragement, but then, oh, good luck, because that age is very rebellious and impulsive and self-absorbed. And those notions or that image is projected onto the junior youth, and they really absorb it, But we kind of flip that and really see the program and those who are trained to volunteer in the program really try to see that age group as a group that's animated by altruism, that has a strong desire for justice. Like it's in that age group, you often hear junior youth say, that's not fair, that's not fair. Because they really have like this sense of justice that they can't quite articulate, but they're unhappy when things aren't fair. They haven't yet become complacent with, oh, it is why it is, that's just how society works. And also this idea of being altruistic, it's really interesting when we talk about a social issue, how that age group, 11 to 14-year-olds, right away think, oh, we can do something to make a difference. From the things in front of them, whether it's homelessness or food security, to random issue, not random, I mean, they're important, but ones that we don't often come across, like the shark fin, harvesting sharks for their fins. They're like, oh, let's change that. Let's, we can make a difference right away. They want to it's a very altruistic age that unfortunately is also the age that's targeted most by companies in advertising, really trying to mold perceptions of who they are and what they need to be happy. So this like innate sense of altruism is often redirected towards the self, how to fit in, how to look cool. And we're seeing that a lot, both in advertising and then how much social media now is plays in their life. And I think a lot of us remember that age group and being that age and how the changes affected us. Sometimes you feel timid, but then sometimes you're really outspoken. Sometimes you're shy, you want to be alone. Sometimes you want to be with a large group. You're really trying to understand your talents and abilities. I think a lot of like the 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, they all have these hopes and ideals. Oh, I'll be a professional hockey player. I'll be this, I'll be an astronaut, I'll be a doctor. But by the time they're 13, 14, they're really thinking deeply about what they're capable of. They're really trying to understand that. And it's also an age, sorry. It's also an age where I think it was referenced earlier with younger children too, but also this age where the mind is developing very quickly. To assist, like another principle behind the program is that really to assist them to understand their capacities and to direct those capacities towards their kind of altruistic inclinations, we need to not treat them as children. So they're not yet adults. Oftentimes they're told to behave like adults, but still treated as a child. And it's very hard for them to understand that contradiction. So in the program, to not treat them like children, the program's been designed in a certain way. So one, the program is organized around groups of friends. So what we do in the neighborhood I live in, but around the world too, because we really have like this network of learning that flows from different cities and different countries and different continents, so that we're constantly building on the knowledge being generated in different places. But right now, the program is organized around groups of friends. And friends who can feel safe and comfortable in sharing their ideas, in creating projects that serve their community, in doing sports and other types of activities. So it's really organized around this group. Sometimes they meet once a week, sometimes they meet three times a week, but they're a group of friends who have a bit of like, not a bit, but a lot of ownership over their group. The program is organized not by a teacher, but by we use the term animator because the role isn't to be the leader. Even like the society often says, oh, the youth leader, but even like we want them to be the leaders. So we just chose this term animator because it kind of helps bring to life what's already there to animate them. We use a global curriculum that draws on like stories of junior youth of this age group from the different continents around the world, and stories of junior youth, what they faced, the moral dilemmas that face them, and then the tough decisions that have to make. So the junior youth in the groups kind of read these stories. For example, one comes from an unnamed country in Africa where there's civil strife and a child's parents were killed, and he has to go through a series of steps about how he chooses hope instead of despair. And although it's centered in a context very far from where we live, the junior youth right away can understand what it means to have disunity in their community and what it means to have to face choices of hope or despair. So it really goes deep into thinking about an idea or a concept. And so there's a program, this animator, this curriculum, and the program is really complemented by camps. And then that's one thing I thought Asa is always talking to me about camps and asking me when the next camp is. And I thought you could share a few words about what you do at a junior youth camp or why it's been important.
I really like having junior camps. It's like having like a big sleepover with all your friends. We have like dorms in Vancouver, like just like little apartment buildings. So then there's rooms with like bunk beds and stuff, and it's really fun. Yeah, there's always a book that we aim to finish by the end of the camp. We usually study it twice a day. How many chapters is like the average book?
Maybe 12 to 20.
Yeah, so we can usually, if you study twice a day, you can finish it in one camp. And yeah, it's really fun. We always do a service project at the end of finishing a camp. And some examples of stuff we've done a lot of stuff with homeless people. We've done food drives, clothes drives. We've we gave out socks was the most recent one, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We also have given cookies to just random people on the street. That sounds really weird, but we at the elementary school I went to, we how much was the grant? We got a grant of a sum of money to a $500 grant to like make a garden a really nice space.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that one camp.
Mm-hmm. Outings.
Oh yeah, we usually go on outings, just like fun trips, like to like a trampoline park, to a lake sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So the books, like I mentioned, the books that they study and they really advance during these camps focus on a big concept like hope, like happiness, like excellence. And it tries to equip them with the language they need to express themselves clearly. So I think that's one element of the empowerment side of the program, is that these young people have a lot to say, but often don't have the words to say it. So we really focus on language development, and there's this intimate connection between language and thought. So for example, like when the junior youth learn the word protagonist, they all know the word consumer, but they don't know the word protagonist well. And so they can start to think of themselves as a protagonist in the community, or really going deep into words like, for example, in math, they learn the idea of a variable, but then we really want them to understand how to use a word in the full range of its ability. And they really look at okay, a variable in math means this, but what are the variables for the betterment of your community? What variables can you identify that are needed to help your neighborhood advance? And so they really kind of go deep into ideas and concepts so they can think about how to apply themselves to improve their community. And it's kind of this, the program is about the empowerment of junior youth. And it's kind of funny, but we find they become most empowered when they think less of themselves and more about, or they're not thinking of themselves, but they're thinking of how to help others. And so that's kind of the context we try to help them develop. And we see it, the confidence they develop, their ability to consult with one another, the courage, their generosity, the kindness. Just the other night when we were giving out wool socks to some of the homeless friends, you could see how their empathy was developing in leaps and bounds in one single evening, to see how, it's not uncommon to hear jokes about homeless people when I work in schools and whatnot. But then to see how they talked about how kind these friends were, how thankful they were. And then maybe just to be brief and wrap it up for now, but a big element of the program of working with junior youth, 12 to 11 to 14-year-olds, is it becomes an arena which we can invite youth in the neighborhood to to contribute. So like the 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, like even there's one girl, she's younger, she's like 16. She began serving as an animator, and she's in alternative school. She's suicidal. She's in and out of the hospital because of issues she's facing, like mental health issues. But once she started working with some others who are supporting her to help younger youth, her confidence, it's like she was a new person. She's always had this contentious relationship with her mom, but as soon as she started serving as an animator, she said, Simon, call my mom, tell her what I'm doing, because she just wanted her mom to be proud of her. You know, she was yearning for something to do that her mom, her family and her community could see her in a new light, and she finally had it, you know. And you know, a wise person once said that, like, when you teach somebody something, 90% of the benefit is for you, 10% for the listener. And I think that's what we see in the youth, you know, as they start helping younger ones, they're even more aware. Oh, I can't swear right now. I'm with younger kids, you know. I gotta behave well. I gotta be a good role model. So that's been such a nice bonus. But it's also a real intergenerational space, because the importance of that age group, I mean, it's so important that everyone, whether they're grandparent or parent, we're trying to provide an avenue for them to volunteer to support this particular age group. So yeah, it's a crisis and victory. It's always ups and downs. But it's been a real delightful process, I think, as a parent, to see. Now I have 2 sons in the junior youth program. To see they have a real positive support group of peers is one of my favorite things.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Well, we've, and Asa, thank you very much for that presentation. So we'd like to open up. I've got to be able to see everybody here. If there's any questions, maybe put your hand up, or you can use reactions to put your hand up. So let's just open it up. And does anybody have anything they'd like to say, or a question they'd like to direct to any one of our speakers? Oh, there's Lizanne. Go ahead, Lizanne.
Hi, this was just for Simon. I was wondering what books you were using. It sounds a lot like the Virtues Project. Is that where you're finding particular words that you're working on a weekly basis, or what texts are you using?
Yeah, I'm not like, I've seen the Virtues Project, and I think it's very similar in terms of like developing the language of those virtues to be able to like incorporate the text specifically. There's a organization called Development Learning Press that really tries to, as far as I understand, unify, like bring together these different books that have been developed in different continents. So right now, there's the Development Learning Press has about like 11 books or 12 books, maybe I'm wrong, that is really, it makes available for anyone who wants to offer this program, they can access those books. If you wanted access to them, probably you could ask Shelley, I don't know.
I'm really impressed with the work you're doing, so well done.
Yeah, we actually did have a junior youth group in Grand Forks for about 3 years. So, you know, and then the kids aged out, some moved away. Yeah. So anyone else have a question or a comment that they'd like to make? No discussions.
I do.
Oh, there's Donna. Go ahead, Donna.
Yeah. Simon, could you list some of the books that you study? Because I think people might be interested in the titles of some of them and what they're about.
Now I test my memory. So there's one that actually comes from China that's really neat that we just studied called Learning About Excellence. Anyways, I won't take your time now, but to hear, they're good to get your hands on, and just even they're best done in group study because it's like short story and then a bunch of kind of exercise questions to either like comprehension, but then also to go into conversation. And they're all really good. But Learning About Excellence is from China. Glimmerings of hope and breezes of confirmation are two that come from different parts of Africa. Glimmerings of hope is the one about the child who's kind of facing choices of hope or despair. Drawing on the power of the word comes from South America. That's a really neat one. We just studied with a group of 14-year-olds, and part of it, they make a youth declaration about who they are and what they want to accomplish in their community. And I was looking for it phonetically before this meeting, but I couldn't find it because it was so inspiring to hear this declaration that the youth made. Drawing on the power of the word. Wellspring of joy is one that actually comes from somewhere in the States, which is a really neat one about how you find joy in your life, how you create the capacity to be joyful rather than being subject to life's changes and chances. Walking the straight path. Habits of an orderly mind is one of the new ones, which is I think Shelley's going to study that with some of her grandchildren. Thinking about numbers is a really neat one and habits about orderly mind because they're math based, but they're about thinking how to apply math in a real meaningful way. Thinking about justice, there's more, but I'm on the spot.
Asa, what was one of your favorite ones?
I really like Glimmerings of Hope. That was my favorite one.
Well, I really appreciated what Lorana had to say. I didn't, Lorana, well, I appreciated what Lorana had to say, but also Natasha. And you both worked in the same place. So you're both involved with that, because I didn't know that about Grand Forks or that we had this, well, I was aware of it, but amazing that we have this Indigenous preschool. So both of the work you both have been involved in has been amazing. So Lizanne, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, I had a question for Natasha. I also am so impressed with Boundary Family Services and its incarnation as Boundary Family and Individual Services Society. I'm just wondering, did something change there? Did something happen where people couldn't all be collaborative in the same building and services spread back out again? I'm just wondering what happened there.
Lizanne, thanks for asking that question, because I was going to do a PS and bring together the fact that Boundary Family Center actually existed, where it had all the services, like it came to be Glanville Center and had all the services on one property. And that happened like 6 months after the conference. So I should have brought it to that point. I feel like I'm not the one to respond to that question, and perhaps Maxine could answer that question, because I left FIST some years ago and was doing other work and just feel like I'm not in the loop. So maybe Maxine could address that.
Yeah, and I myself have been retired now. This is going on 9 years, but I do know that, prior to retiring, that already Interior Health was putting great pressure on taking their public health nurses back and making their own module again. And part of it is when a key person retired from public health nursing, they made that step because this other person was so passionate about the integration piece. And education still works pretty closely in, the school district. As you know, the Glanville Center is owned by School District 51, and they have been a major partner along with Boundary Family Services. I know that mental health, child and youth mental health has been greatly involved in the past, but as times shift and change and another generation takes over, they have to find their way in terms of bringing all this together. I have to really applaud Lorana as a parent for ensuring that model became entrenched, and even more so around her circles of support, you know, for her own child. And so, and I know that and I'm sure, though I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that the Métis Nation of BC is really looking forward to you bringing, you know, your energy and your determination to making that happen amongst all communities for all kids, especially the Métis children, or any children, I believe. And I know that now the ministries are talking about doing the hub model. Well, we had the hub model. We were celebrated provincially and on some national fronts for the work we were doing in the boundary. So they may find themselves again, but really it's to this next generation to redefine and to find a way to keep that integration.
Yes, thank you, Maxine. And, you know, it's true, every child deserves a circle of support, a village, right? It does take a village to raise a child, and that's such an important message. I didn't really speak to that piece, so thank you for bringing that up, Maxine. I was, as a parent, a very strong advocate and helped to develop the Aboriginal Supported Child Development's Child Circle of Support. It was adapted from a model I created for my own daughter, and I called her model Trinity's ecological model of support. So you have place the child at the center, then you wrap them with their primary supports, and then their consultative supports, then their long-term supports, and that is now a model used provincially to help children with support needs across the province. And it happens at the daycare every day. They have a circle of support. They have, it's like an extension of family. They're like the aunties, you know, helping to raise the children. And I really appreciated your messages, Natasha. Thank you so much. And Simon, you guys are doing some amazing work over there. I really feel like our community needs to model what's going on over there, because yeah, that's just incredible work. And at all the various stages in childhood, they need that support, that encouragement, that helpful hand, the help to raise them up in a good way. And being together like this is a great way to start, and to keep that movement flowing in community will only help us be better supports for all the children in our communities. So thank you, everybody.
And I do want to say that when we work together as an integrated team, that the outcomes for our children are greatly improved and greatly enhanced. And it was, you know, our kids slipping through the cracks that brought the Boundary Integrated Services teams together originally, because being in the Boundary, we really didn't have an abundance of services. We were at the tail end of whether the Okanagan or the West Kootenay were offering us something. So we had to find it ourselves. And thanks for keeping on the work. And I know that, you know, it will continue in some form or another. And just like an ebb and flow of all things, it will become more intensified, I'm sure, over time. So thank you.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our hour. Does anybody have any last questions or comments they want to make? No? Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we hope to see you at another Peace Cafe. Thanks, Luzanne. And to the Grand Forks Library. They're wonderful collaborators.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say something about one thing that Shelley does here. She did have a junior youth group going for about 3 years, and now she does a lot on Zoom with her grandchildren. So she carries on and she shares it with her friends, what she's learning, you know, the 90% that she's learning, and she shares. So I just want to thank all of you grandmothers out there, because you are very important to your grandchildren. So anyway, thank you so much, Simon and Asa. it's so wonderful to see your faces among us and to have fathers and sons join us. So thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.